On a gray morning in early 1943, the horizon above East Anglia was streaked with the silhouettes of B-17 Flying Fortresses and Lancaster bombers, engines roaring in unison as they climbed toward the steel skies of Nazi-occupied Europe. These were not merely planes. They were lifelines for a desperate Allied strategy, precision bombing that would cripple Germany's war machine. Yet amid the meticulously planned formations of the U.S. 8th Air Force and the RAF Bomber Command, a shadow lingered. Some aircraft, despite careful navigation and coordination, would simply vanish into the vast expanse of European airspace. No wreckage. No survivors. Only the haunting question: what had happened to them? The human cost of these operations was staggering. Pilots and crews faced flak batteries that could shred aluminum in seconds, Luftwaffe fighters with deadly precision, and weather that often turned routine flights into trials of survival. On March 24, 1943, the 91st Bomb Group prepared for a mission over Hanover, Germany. Among them was a B-17 nicknamed Silver Star, piloted by Captain James Callahan, a 24-year-old veteran of 20 previous raids. His crew, a mixture of Americans and a few recent recruits, had grown accustomed to the rhythm of fear and focus that defined every sortie. The climb, the overcast, the sudden bursts of flak, and the frantic coordination of defensive gunners. Even before leaving RAF Bassingbourn, the atmosphere was tense. Mechanics had whispered concerns about minor engine issues, and intelligence officers had warned of increased Luftwaffe activity in northern Germany. Flight logs from the 91st note that weather over Hanover was clear at 8:30, perfect for a bombing run, but that clarity was deceptive. Flying high over enemy territory, the Silver Star's crew maintained radio contact with the formation, reporting nothing unusual. Yet minutes later, the plane vanished from radar and from sight of accompanying aircraft. No mayday call, no distress signal, nothing. Just silence. Historical records reveal that this was not an isolated case. The 8th Air Force lost dozens of aircraft during the spring of 1943 under similarly mysterious circumstances. Flight diaries from fellow crews describe how planes simply disappeared into clouds, or went down without a trace, leaving men on the ground grasping for explanations. A letter from Sergeant Robert Hensley, a radio operator in another B-17, captures the anxiety that gripped these men. "We count heads before takeoff, hoping we won't have to add another blank line on the report tonight." Such words convey a chilling reality. In the vast theater of aerial warfare, not every loss could be explained, and the sky itself seemed a labyrinth that could swallow men whole. Investigators at the time attempted to trace the Silver Star's last known coordinates. Reports suggested a potential engagement with a German Focke-Wulf FW-190 over the outskirts of Hanover, but no wreckage was ever recovered. The Luftwaffe archives from that period make only vague mention of a bomber destroyed, crew unknown, reflecting both the chaos of war and the limitations of record-keeping in the midst of combat. The families of the crew, meanwhile, were left with conflicting information and the unbearable limbo of uncertainty, a torment replicated across air bases in England, France, and the United States. Modern historians continue to study these incidents, combining aerial reconnaissance, archival documents, and eyewitness testimony to piece together the fate of lost airmen. Some hypotheses suggest that sudden weather changes or mechanical failures at high altitude could have caused catastrophic failures, while others point to secret German radar or anti-aircraft strategies that remain partially classified. Yet for many of these aircraft and their crews, the truth remains elusive, buried in forests, rivers, or lost to history entirely. As the Silver Star and its crew disappeared into the morning sky, the tension and danger of every Allied bombing mission became palpably real. For every bomber that returned, another was never heard from again, leaving gaping voids in the narrative of the air war over Europe. It is this combination of bravery, meticulous planning, and inexplicable loss that defines the mysterious legacy of the airmen of 1943. The story of the vanished Silver Star, alongside countless other missing aircraft, set the stage for a wartime reality where victory and disappearance coexisted in the same breath, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions, grief, and unresolved intrigue that would haunt the Allies for decades to come. In the skies over Europe, the war raged, yet some voices were forever silenced, leaving behind only fragments of a story that refuses to be fully told, a story that compels historians and families alike to keep searching for answers that might never come. March 24, 1943, dawned with a cold, brittle clarity over East Anglia, the kind of morning that pilots relied upon for visual navigation. The 91st Bomb Group, based at RAF Bassingbourn, was assembling for a high-stakes mission targeting Hanover's industrial heart. Among them was a B-17 Flying Fortress nicknamed Silver Star, carrying a crew of 10 men led by Captain James Callahan. For the veterans among them, the pre-flight ritual, checking maps, calibrating instruments, and reviewing the day's formation, was as familiar as breathing. Yet beneath this routine lay a shadow of unease, the unspoken recognition that some missions would end in disappearance rather than safe return. The flight out of England was textbook. Formation flying over the North Sea provided mutual protection. The B-17's heavy defensive armament intended to deter any Luftwaffe interceptors. Radio chatter was sporadic but normal, with crews exchanging minor observations about cloud cover and fuel status. However, as they approached the outskirts of Hanover, tension mounted. Anti-aircraft flak bursts tore through the sky like jagged steel, and the occasional Focke-Wulf FW-190 darted in and out of the formation, testing gunners' reflexes. The Silver Star reported routine damage, a minor hit to a wing panel, but within minutes, it simply vanished from radar and from the sight of accompanying aircraft. No mayday call, no distress signal, just a sudden, unsettling silence. Investigations after the war indicate that the disappearance was emblematic of a broader pattern. The 91st Bomb Group suffered multiple losses that spring, often with planes failing to return from well-charted routes. Flight logs, personnel diaries, and mission debriefs reveal the same chilling theme. Crews that departed in daylight formations over familiar targets sometimes vanished as if swallowed by the sky. Sergeant Robert Hensley, a radio operator in a neighboring B-17, wrote home, "You hope, you pray, but some planes never speak again. They're just gone." This sentiment, echoing across multiple bomber groups, captured the pervasive fear and uncertainty that characterized high-altitude operations over enemy territory. Official reports from Allied intelligence were inconclusive. German records briefly mentioned aerial engagements near Hanover that coincided with the disappearance of several B-17s, yet the details were often vague or contradictory. Some historians speculate that sudden mechanical failures, particularly at extreme altitudes, could have caused catastrophic mid-air breakups. Others suggest that the Luftwaffe, using increasingly sophisticated radar and night interception tactics, may have played a more active role than previously acknowledged. Despite decades of research, the exact fate of the Silver Star and its crew remains a topic of debate, illustrating the broader mystery of airmen lost without trace during World War II. Families of the missing faced the agony of uncertainty. Notices of "missing in action" carried little closure, and letters from the front often painted a picture of bravery overshadowed by fear. The psychological toll on relatives and fellow servicemen was immense, with many grappling not just with loss but with the profound ambiguity surrounding their loved ones' final moments. The human dimension of these missions, individual courage, camaraderie, and the shadow of disappearance, underscores the emotional stakes of aerial warfare, where every sortie carried the potential for sudden, irreversible absence. From a tactical perspective, the losses prompted adjustments in Allied strategy. Flight formations became tighter, missions were reassessed, and emergency protocols were reinforced. Yet no amount of planning could entirely eliminate the danger posed by flak, fighter interception, or the unpredictable elements of weather. Each mission over Germany was a high-stakes gamble, where even experienced crews faced the possibility of becoming one of history's unsolved aerial mysteries. As the investigation into the Silver Star continued, a broader pattern emerged. Across the English Channel and into northern France, other aircraft were similarly lost under enigmatic circumstances. Some vanished over familiar flight paths, while others disappeared during diversionary missions or reconnaissance sorties. The archival evidence, scattered mission logs, recovered letters, and post-war interviews, began to weave a narrative of repeated, inexplicable loss, suggesting that the skies themselves held secrets that even the most experienced pilots could not fully comprehend. The story of the Silver Star remains a testament to both courage and uncertainty. Its disappearance symbolizes the broader mystery of wartime aviation, where meticulous planning, advanced technology, and human skill often collided with chaos, randomness, and the unknown. As historians piece together fragments of evidence decades later, the unresolved fate of these lost airmen continues to inspire questions, reflection, and a somber respect for the men who never returned. In the shadows of history, the Silver Star waits, a reminder that even amid the machinery of war, some stories are left unfinished, their answers carried only by the winds over Europe, where a single bomber could vanish without a trace. By 1944, the Allied air offensive over Europe had intensified to unprecedented levels. RAF Bomber Command, operating from bases in Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, launched night raids deep into German-occupied territory, targeting factories, transportation hubs, and military installations. Among these units, the famed No. 617 Squadron, later immortalized as the Dam Busters, was executing precision raids using Lancaster bombers. Yet even these highly trained crews faced an unsettling reality. Some aircraft would disappear during missions, leaving investigators and historians puzzled for decades. It was not only the vastness of the European sky that concealed them, but also the lethal combination of flak, nighttime navigation challenges, and enemy fighter tactics. On the night of June 11, 1944, a Lancaster bomber nicknamed Midnight Sentinel, piloted by Flight Lieutenant Arthur Hughes, departed RAF Woodhall Spa on a mission to disrupt railway lines near Rouen in northern France. The crew, a mix of seasoned veterans and recent recruits, had briefed extensively on potential anti-aircraft defenses, expected cloud cover, and alternate escape routes. Yet as they crossed the channel, visibility deteriorated, and bursts of flak began to pepper the night sky. One navigator later wrote in his log, "The sky was alive with tracer. You couldn't tell friend from foe. Every heartbeat counted." The Midnight Sentinel maintained formation for as long as possible, but somewhere over northern France, it vanished, leaving only distant echoes of gunfire and sporadic radar blips to mark its final moments. This pattern of mysterious disappearances was far from isolated. Over the summer of 1944, multiple Lancasters and Mosquitoes failed to return from operations across northern France and Belgium. Flight debriefs from other crews recorded fleeting glimpses of burning aircraft or parachutes, yet in many cases nothing tangible was ever recovered. The British Air Ministry described these losses in terse, factual reports: aircraft and crew unaccounted for, presumed lost over enemy territory. To families and fellow airmen, these statements provided little comfort. Letters from pilots, written in the tense hours before takeoff, reveal the psychological strain of knowing that each sortie could end with inexplicable disappearance. Flight Sergeant William Carter wrote, "You fly into the dark, knowing that the next heartbeat may be your last, and sometimes there's no one left to find you." Post-war analysis revealed several contributing factors to these losses. Night operations, essential to reduce exposure to German fighters, increased the risk of navigation errors. Radar technology, still in its infancy, could malfunction or mislead crews, especially under cloud cover or heavy flak. Luftwaffe night fighters, employing the latest radar-assisted interception techniques, were increasingly effective, targeting both experienced and green airmen alike. Despite these findings, the fates of many aircraft remained unresolved. Some wrecks were eventually discovered decades later in remote forests, riverbeds, or fields, but the identities of the crews often took years to confirm, leaving lingering questions and a sense of historical incompleteness. The disappearance of the Midnight Sentinel exemplifies the intersecting challenges of tactical warfare, environmental hazards, and human error. For historians, reconstructing such missions relies on piecing together scattered documents. Radar logs, eyewitness accounts from occupied villages, intercepted communications, and post-war Luftwaffe records. Even then, gaps remain. In many instances, entire crews were presumed lost without ever leaving a tangible trace. The mysteries surrounding these missions extend beyond mere statistics. They are stories of men who risked everything, and sometimes paid the ultimate price in ways that remain unexplained. The emotional impact of these losses resonated across the Allied air forces. Each missing aircraft created a ripple of grief, speculation, and determination. Investigators and veteran associations worked tirelessly to locate wrecks, recover remains, and reconstruct events from fragmentary evidence. Yet even with recovered aircraft, questions lingered. What caused the plane to go off course? Did mechanical failure, enemy action, or misjudged navigation contribute? These uncertainties underscore the complex reality of aerial warfare, where meticulous planning often collided with the unpredictable forces of technology, weather, and human decision-making. As the night skies over northern France grew quiet, the legacy of the missing Lancasters took hold. They represented not just strategic losses but the enduring enigma of wartime aviation, where skill and courage could be rendered invisible by circumstances beyond any individual's control. For every airman who vanished, an entire community, families, comrades, and historians, was left piecing together fragments of evidence, seeking meaning in the absence. The Midnight Sentinel and countless other lost aircraft remain symbols of bravery shadowed by mystery, a reminder that even in the midst of calculated military campaigns, some stories are written only in the spaces between radar blips, flak bursts, and the silence of the sky. In the aftermath of disappearing aircraft across Europe, Allied investigators faced a daunting task: reconstructing events from fragments of evidence scattered across occupied territories. Flight logs, letters, and debriefs provided only partial insight, while recovered documents from captured German airfields offered tantalizing but often contradictory clues. By mid-1944, it became apparent that some missions, especially those over northern France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, involved more than standard combat hazards. There were unrecorded aerial engagements, unusual flak patterns, and in rare cases discrepancies in the reported positions of missing aircraft. One such case involved a B-24 Liberator of the 389th Bomb Group, tasked with bombing a synthetic oil plant near Leipzig in July 1944. The aircraft, piloted by Captain Edward Morrison, reported reaching the target zone but failed to transmit a return message. Post-war investigation revealed partial German records indicating anti-aircraft batteries had engaged an unidentified bomber at high altitude around the same coordinates. Yet, remarkably, no wreckage was ever found. Morrison and his crew were officially listed as missing in action, leaving historians and family members with questions that decades of research have not fully answered. Similar mysteries emerged from RAF archives. No. 619 Squadron reported 2 Lancasters missing on night raids over Rouen in August 1944, with radar plots suggesting mid-air deviations that did not align with planned flight paths. Some aircraft might have collided with each other in the dark, while others may have fallen victim to previously unreported experimental flak defenses. Memoirs from surviving airmen describe a night sky that seemed almost sentient in its danger. It was as if the sky had its own mind, recalled Flight Sergeant Henry Lawson. Planes we should have seen just disappeared, swallowed by darkness and fire. These first-hand accounts highlight the unpredictable, often chaotic conditions that crews faced and the difficulty investigators had in piecing together coherent narratives from incomplete data. Beyond flight paths and radar blips, recovered letters and diaries offered insight into the human experience of these missions. Some described unusual sightings over enemy territory, tracer fire that appeared to follow the bombers precisely, or flashes that suggested more advanced German anti-aircraft technology than previously acknowledged. In one letter, Navigator Pilot Officer Frank Hutton wrote, "The flak tonight is not like the others. It seems to anticipate us. I pray we make it home." Historians debate whether these observations reflect genuine experimental defenses, the psychological strain of nighttime missions, or a combination of both. Regardless, they illustrate the layers of uncertainty surrounding lost aircraft, where technical, tactical, and human factors intersected in ways that left few answers. Efforts to locate wrecks intensified after the war. Allied and German records were cross-referenced with aerial reconnaissance and local eyewitness reports, sometimes decades after the fact. Many wrecks were discovered in remote forests, along riverbeds, or buried under farmland, often in remarkably good condition given the decades that had passed. In some instances, crews were identified through personal effects or serial numbers on instruments. Yet for every discovery, several more remained unresolved, reinforcing the notion that some aircraft and their crews were likely gone forever, hidden by geography, wartime confusion, or both. The insights gained from these investigations influenced post-war historical methodology. Military historians began to combine technical analysis, personal narratives, and enemy records to reconstruct missions, leading to a more nuanced understanding of aerial warfare's complexities. However, unresolved cases such as the B-24 over Leipzig or the Lancasters over Rouen serve as stark reminders that even meticulous documentation cannot always account for chaos and unpredictability in war. The process of discovery often raises as many questions as it answers, highlighting the delicate interplay between fact, conjecture, and enduring mystery. As investigators pieced together flight paths, radar records, and eyewitness testimonies, a larger pattern of unexplained losses became evident. Entire crews vanished without a trace, leaving the skies above Europe littered not only with wreckage but with unanswered questions. The stories of these lost airmen, fragmented, conflicting, and tantalizingly incomplete, remind us that war is not just a matter of strategy and numbers but also of human lives subjected to forces beyond comprehension. In the shadows of these investigations, historians continue to trace the paths of missing aircraft, probing into the unknown and attempting to reconstruct final moments that may forever remain elusive. The mystery persists, hanging like a silent cloud over the skies where courage met uncertainty in equal measure. In the years following the end of World War II, efforts to locate missing airmen and their aircraft became both a mission of closure and a matter of historical record. Veteran organizations, local historians, and surviving comrades began combing the European countryside, consulting aerial reconnaissance photos, German military records, and eyewitness accounts from towns and villages that had witnessed wartime operations. From the dense forests of Belgium to the marshy lowlands of the Netherlands, countless wrecks were gradually uncovered, often decades after the planes had vanished. Some discoveries revealed entire crews still strapped into their seats, a frozen testament to the instantaneous violence of aerial combat and the harsh realities of high-altitude missions. One notable recovery occurred in 1952 when AB-17 from the 91st Bomb Group, missing since a 1943 mission over Hanover, was located in a remote forested valley. Its fuselage was remarkably intact, and investigators could identify the crew through serial numbers etched on personal equipment. Yet even with this discovery, significant questions remained. Why had the aircraft deviated so far from its planned flight path? Was it mechanical failure, evasive maneuvering from enemy fire, or another unforeseen factor that sealed its fate? These uncertainties illustrate the recurring theme of wartime aviation mysteries, where answers may emerge, but the full story remains partially obscured by decades of secrecy, chaos, and the fog of war. The process of reconstructing lost missions often relied on painstaking detective work. Flight logs, letters from airmen, and captured German intelligence were cross-referenced with the geography of crash sites, ballistics analyses, and even meteorological data. In one case, No. 617 Squadron's Lancaster, missing during a night raid in 1944, was eventually traced to a small field near Rouen. Local villagers had preserved oral memories of a burning plane that had fallen silently into the landscape. Witnesses who had never realized their recollections would become vital historical evidence decades later. These narratives highlight the complex interplay between human memory, archival research, and modern investigative techniques in piecing together the fate of missing airmen. Despite these recoveries, many aircraft remain unaccounted for. Swamps, rivers, and dense forests have swallowed wrecks entirely, and decades of agriculture and urban development have altered landscapes once familiar to wartime crews. Even when debris is found, identifying the crew or determining the precise circumstances of a plane's disappearance is often impossible. This reality underscores the persistence of mystery in wartime aviation history. For every plane located, multiple others remain invisible, leaving gaps that challenge historians and families alike. The psychological and emotional impact of unresolved cases cannot be overstated. Families of missing airmen spent years in limbo, hoping for news, whether of survival or confirmation of death. The process of recovery brought both relief and renewed grief, as physical evidence of loss confirmed worst fears but offered closure that had long been denied. For the men and women of the Allied Air Forces, these unresolved missions became part of a collective memory of bravery shadowed by the unknown, a legacy carried forward in reunions, memorials, and historical research. Modern historians continue to revisit these cases using advanced technology, including ground-penetrating radar, drone surveys, and forensic analysis, in hopes of locating the last remaining missing aircraft. Every discovery provides valuable insight not only into the tactical and technical aspects of the war but also into the human dimension of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring uncertainty faced by airmen. By reconstructing the final flights of these lost crews, researchers honor both historical truth and the personal stories of those who never returned, bridging the gap between past and present. Yet for all the recoveries, mysteries persist. Entire crews remain unaccounted for, and some planes that were reportedly destroyed are nowhere to be found. These gaps in the historical record create a haunting narrative of disappearance that continues to captivate historians, veterans, and the public. As the skies of Europe slowly healed from the scars of war, the stories of these missing airmen lingered, a reminder that even decades later, the full scope of loss, and the bravery of those who took to the air, cannot be completely measured. In every discovered wreck, in every unidentified crew, the war's unanswered questions endure, compelling us to keep searching, piecing together, and remembering. Decades have passed since the final sorties of World War II, yet the stories of missing airmen continue to resonate, their fates lingering as silent echoes across the European skies. Memorials, museums, and archives preserve fragments of these narratives, ensuring that courage and sacrifice are not forgotten. Yet for many families and historians, the lingering mysteries, planes that vanished without a trace, crews never recovered, and missions shrouded in incomplete records, remain a source of both fascination and sorrow. The skies that once defined the theater of war are now peaceful, but the unanswered questions hover like invisible markers above the fields, forests, and rivers where history unfolded. In the Netherlands, Belgium, and northern France, local historians and veteran associations continue to investigate reported crash sites, sometimes guided by decades-old oral testimonies from villagers who witnessed the destruction firsthand. In one instance, a small forested patch in Belgium yielded the remnants of a Lancaster bomber from No. 619 Squadron, missing since a 1944 night raid. Forensic analysis and recovered personal effects allowed researchers to identify the crew, providing closure to families long haunted by uncertainty. Yet the reconstruction of events often leaves room for doubt. What caused the plane to deviate? Did it collide with another aircraft in the dark, or was it felled by an unseen burst of flak? These questions underscore the enduring complexity of reconstructing high-altitude aerial missions, even with modern investigative tools. Archival research continues to play a pivotal role in unraveling these mysteries. Flight logs, intelligence intercepts, and captured German documents are painstakingly cross-referenced, allowing historians to trace the paths of lost bombers and reconcile discrepancies in wartime reports. Some cases reveal surprising insights: unrecorded Luftwaffe night fighter operations, experimental flak installations, and navigation errors compounded by challenging weather. Each discovery contributes to a broader understanding of the air war over Europe, yet for every solved case, multiple disappearances remain unresolved, emphasizing the persistent enigma of wartime aviation. The human dimension of these stories is profound. Families of missing airmen often spent decades awaiting word, enduring the uncertainty of missing in action notifications. Their perseverance, combined with the dedication of historians and veteran organizations, has gradually restored names, dates, and final resting places to those lost. Letters from pilots and crew members, preserved in archives or passed down through families, capture the tension, fear, and camaraderie of life at 20,000 feet. One navigator, writing in 1944, noted, "Every mission feels like walking a tightrope across the clouds. One misstep, and the world below disappears." These words resonate not just as historical testimony but as a timeless reflection of human courage under extreme duress. The lessons of these unresolved missions extend beyond history. They remind us that the cost of war is not only measured in statistics or strategic outcomes, but in lives that vanish without clarity, leaving behind questions that echo across generations. Modern researchers use advanced technology, drones, ground-penetrating radar, and forensic analysis to continue the search, bridging the gap between historical record and physical evidence. Each discovery, each recovered aircraft, contributes to a mosaic of understanding, honoring the bravery of men who flew into danger and never returned. Yet, for all the research, recovery, and documentation, some mysteries remain. Entire crews disappeared into forests, rivers, and fields, leaving behind no conclusive record of their final moments. These absences serve as a reminder that even in the most meticulously planned campaigns, chaos, chance, and the vastness of the European theater could erase history almost entirely. The vanished aircraft, like spectral witnesses, testify to the bravery and sacrifice of those who soared into the unknown, their stories incomplete yet undeniably powerful. As historians, veterans, and families continue to trace these lost paths, the narrative of missing airmen over Europe serves both as a record of courage and a meditation on the unknowable dimensions of war. Each recovered plane, each identified crew, illuminates fragments of a past marked by uncertainty and heroism. And yet, the skies retain their silent mysteries. The vanished airmen, like shadows cast across time, remind us that history is not only about what we can document, but also about what remains hidden, compelling us to remember, reflect, and search for answers that may forever remain just out of reach. In the vast theater of World War II, their legacy endures, not only in memorials and archives, but in the enduring questions that rise like whispers from the clouds.